Good morning. Happiness Hussy coming in hot today with a conversation that you do not want to miss about why you're doing your New Year's resolutions wrong. And I have with me my friend Paul Levitin today, and I am super excited to mesh minds here because we recently connected on Paul's podcast. And I'm going to let him tell a little bit more about himself, but we found out that we share a lot of similarities, including our favorite catchphrases. So maybe you'll catch some of those during this conversation. We shall see. But welcome, Paul. Thanks for being here. I'd love for you just to briefly introduce yourself so that everybody knows who you are.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Christy, and hi to everyone watching in internet land. My
Yeah.
name is Paul Levitin. As Christy said, I have a podcast called Happy Healthy Human, and I connected with Christy because she is the happiness hussy, and we had an episode that released just around New Year. It was actually my first episode of 2024 that I released was Christy's episode, and we just jived really well, talking about all things happiness, mindset, personal growth, personal development, and now being a week, almost two into the new year, we decided to collaborate and talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions because now I've found is about the time that people start falling off, unfortunately.
Yeah. Whoops. We always have good intentions, right? We start out strong and we're like, yes, we're going to do this thing. And then life gets in the way, right? Or sometimes, to be honest, we get in our own fucking way and we just have excuses. We have stories, or sometimes our subconscious just isn't on board with that plan. And so we find ourselves, quote unquote, self-sabotaging ourselves. Now, my take on this, and if you've been listening to me for a while, you probably know my take on self-sabotage is actually one of self-preservation. I do believe that no one's out there going to like, let me fuck this up for myself. We are doing our best. We're doing the best that we can with the resources and understanding that we have. And sometimes we're pushing the limits. And so our safety mechanism kicks in and says, well, hold up here. This is outside of what I know is safe and familiar. And ultimately that's what that survival mechanism is to keep us in the safe, in the familiar. And so it reins us back in. So it's not actually about self-sabotage. We're not trying to mess it up. We're actually just trying to stay safe.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And the issue comes from our brain, our subconscious, which is doing this. It's always calculating every second of every day. Is this going to keep me safe or is this going to be dangerous? Is this going to keep me comfortable or is this going to push me outside? But what it's not understanding is that there's a disconnect between what's safe and comfortable right now and what's beneficial for us in the future. And those two things are almost always at odds. The thing that you quote unquote need to do to be healthy, to be happy, to have a better life is always going to be uncomfortable in the short run right now,
Yeah.
but it's going to give you benefit down the road. But our brain doesn't operate like that. It doesn't care. It operates under the principle of what have you done for me lately? Like right
Yeah.
now is what matters. I have to worry about surviving right now. I don't worry about what happens 5 years from now if I don't exercise. I worry about conserving energy right here in this moment. And that pretty much sums up the problem with everything in life because that is always, as I said, going on. It's a program that's running in the background at every given moment. That's why we give up on our dreams. It's why we don't do the things that we quote unquote say we should or need to do. And
Yeah.
as you said, we self-sabotage. It's coming from a place of perseverance or of preservation, I should
Yeah.
say, that your brain is keeping you safe. Everything that you do from a place of goodness. And I extend this out to other people too, right? It's like when you self-sabotage, it's because your brain is trying to do what it thinks is best for you in that moment. So I see that in other people too. It's like anytime someone's rude to me or short with me or you argue with someone or anything like that, it's like something in their brain is telling them that that's the right
Right.
thing to do. Yeah, it's like that they needed to do that for whatever reason. So I don't hold it against anyone. And I certainly don't hold it against myself when I quote unquote fall off, mess up, or struggle, because that's part of the process.
Oh, like, hello, humanity. It's part of being human. Like, this is a conversation that we have with our kids a lot because, and when they're growing, they're learning and they're sort of observing that if we make mistakes, we might get in trouble. And so it's an important lesson to take in, especially as an adult. Now you're not really at the liberty of being scolded by other people. And if you are, that's actually more about them than you. The truth is we've been taught for so long to fit inside the boxes and do what we've been told and to obey that we have lost touch with listening to ourselves, what we need, what we want. And there is typically a disconnect because we're running on maybe the autopilot of what's been safe in the past and what has worked in the past. But now if you're sitting here thinking, I want to do something different this year, which is probably why you're setting a New Year's resolution. You're thinking, I want some sort of different outcome or different experience this year. And then you're not showing up. We got to work on that incongruence, because otherwise it's going to be real hard for you to actually show up. So, Paul, I would love for you to just start us off with some ideas on how, first of all, we can get back on the wagon when we've fallen off, and then also how to better stay there. And then let's just converse about that, because I think there's lots of goodies to come out of this. I think we both have lots of ideas to share on this topic, but I'm going to pass it to you to get us started here.
Yeah, so I think we could talk about New Year's resolutions because that's the time of the year, but really what we're just talking about is goal setting, because that really is what this is. New Year's resolutions are just timely goals.
Yeah,
And you mentioned before we started recording, it's like being a little anti-resolutions, which I know a lot of coaches and health people are, because it's like you don't need to wait till January 1st to get started. You can start any day.
every day is a good day.
Exactly. Starting December 27th will give you 4 extra days working towards your goal rather than waiting till January 1st, which I get and I agree with. But I do also understand that humans have inside of us a natural tendency to adhere to what they call the fresh start bias, which is things that feel like a fresh start, a new year, a birthday, a new job, a new month, a new week, a new day, all feel better, right? It's like, I'll start Monday. That's a real thing. It just feels in our brain like the turning of a page. And that feels like, okay, like that's a good time to start something new. So we can just lean into that, right? So again, but you can also understand that it doesn't have to be a new year. It could be a new
Right.
day. It could be tomorrow. It could be a new week. There's always a fresh start coming. But now, when you say that you're starting something January 1st, it's the new year, you want to, it all starts again with goal setting. And to me, something I've been thinking a lot about recently is enthusiasm.
Hmm.
So many of our goals that we set are things that we don't actually want to do.
Word. We are often chasing society's definition of what we should want too, right? So we can often get sidetracked by other people's visions and ideas, and they might not actually align with what we want.
Right. And even setting a New Year's resolution, it's like, are you setting this goal because you want to, or because it's New Year and you're supposed to set a New Year's resolution? I made a post the other day on TikTok about this. It's like nothing in nature grows in the winter. Like in nature, everything is hibernating. Trees are dying for rebirth in the spring. Birds fly south for the winter. Bees go and they're not pollinating. And yet, as humans, we have created this calendar, which isn't real. We've created time that goes against everything. Like the winter solstice is the longest day of night in the year. And it's when we decide that we want to start making goals, it just goes counter to everything in nature. So it's understandable when you're just like, I don't know, I'm just not feeling it. So that's one side of things. But to the enthusiasm point, again, where is this even coming from? Why do I want it? Right? Is it society's goal? Is it my parents? Is it my boss? Is it my partner who's telling me you should, the shoulds have these things? But even beyond that, even if we want the thing, when I talk about enthusiasm, it's about how do I go about getting it? So we can say, I want to lose weight. And that very well might be a thing that we want, the result. But are you enthusiastic about the action steps that you're taking to get the result? Because there's a lot of ways to lose weight. But if the way that you're trying to lose weight is by cutting out carbs when your favorite food is pasta, and by running every day when your knees hurt and you hate running, it's like you're probably going to have a hard fought battle. And eventually, your brain, seeking safety, seeking comfort, is going to go, screw this, there's no point.
Yeah.
Whereas if you could find something that you're enthusiastic about, right, you still do have to eat healthier. You still do have to exercise more if your goal is to lose weight. And that's fine. But what about Zumba? What about dancing? What about yoga? What about eating in moderation, or having a meal plan where you get to have the carbs that you want, but less often, so that you're still creating that calorie deficit and you're still moving the needle forward? Now, this is something that you're not fighting against yourself. The actions that you're taking, yes, there's a little discomfort there. We do need some discomfort to create change, but you're doing it in a way that you're like, okay, like, I don't really mind this. Like, I'm eating more fruits and vegetables. I don't miss all of the candy. I've replaced one thing with the other. Again, I'm not trying to force myself to run a marathon because I hate running, but sitting on the bike and watching Netflix is a way to do cardio that I actually enjoy. So that's where I start. It's like, are you actually wanting to do the thing that you're trying to force yourself to do?
It's such an important distinction, especially when it comes to things like weight loss. Because if you're not doing things you enjoy doing, chances are you're going to get bored. Your dislike of the activity is going to undermine you or derail you, or it's going to just feel like you said, like an uphill slog, and you're just going to be like, forget it, it's too much, and back to the drawing board. And sometimes, if anybody else is like me, my back to the drawing board is usually a few steps further back than where I was to start with. So it's a whole cycle that ultimately we want to avoid, because the truth is, and you kind of touched on this idea, it's not about that end destination, it's about the journey. And if you can find enjoyment and contentment in the journey, in the process, well, first of all, you have way more likelihood of getting to whatever sort of end goal or destination that you kind of have in mind, and you are going to have a good time doing it. So that's really a win-win. The truth is, the better we feel, the more likely we are to take actions that feel good and propel us towards our goals or intentions. Now, I don't love the word goals, I think, just because it's so like, I don't know, it's so focused on the end piece. So like, I'm not hating on goals set in people, but the most important piece to me is the intention of creating a journey that feels worthwhile to you as well, because that is actually the path that's going to get you to the goal. If you don't have that intention, if you're not going to enjoy the process in some way, now I'm not saying, it's going to be fun every step of the way. We have to be a little bit on board with it being maybe a little uncomfortable, a restrictive sort of choice now for a greater result later is sometimes necessary. But we can do it, like you said, there are ways to work around this so that it doesn't feel so awful. Might it take you a little bit longer than losing 30 pounds by next week? Yes, it will, because that's not reasonable to start with. And so setting those reasonable timelines is really helpful as well. To me, if I were going to look at creating something new, I am all in on intention setting, because to me, that's what gives the power to that desired end goal, because the intention is what's going to drive my action, right? It's going to drive my experience of the process, and it's going to keep me moving towards it because I want to feel this way. I want to do these things, and I'm going to step up and hold the promises and word that I made to myself about doing it when I've set that intention. And to me,
Yeah,
that's the first step.
yeah, for sure. This is why we're so aligned and why we get along
Yeah.
so well. Literally, the podcast episode I released last week was on intention setting, and we
Yeah.
didn't plan this, right? It's just like that's because we're so there's. I always tell people it's like this is just the stuff that works. This is not me telling you like don't set big ambitious goals, don't overwhelm yourself, don't do this because I want you to go there slower. This is not me saying don't try to lose 30 pounds in a week because I'm trying to hold you back. It's because this is the stuff that works. If there
Yeah.
were a way to do things faster, we would. But the reality is that that's the next piece. So if starting with enthusiasm is step one, to me, again, the intention that those kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The second thing that makes people fall off their New Year's resolutions is trying to do too much too fast. I
Yep.
call this the New Year's resolution effect, right? It's like it's January 1st. What did you decide to do? Go to the gym more, cut out carbs, stop drinking alcohol, stop scrolling on your phone,
Oh,
going to bed easier. Like you're drinking through a fire hose. You're trying to do too much too soon. And to your point and my point earlier, it's like the human tendency is to push away from uncomfortable things, and change is uncomfortable. So now when you're trying to layer 5, 10 changes into one foul swoop, that's more uncomfortable and gives your brain, your subconscious, more reason to quit. And now
too
you add
much.
to the fact, right? You add on top of that the fact that you're not enthusiastic. You're picking a bunch of changes that you don't even want to do. And that's a recipe for falling off by week 1, week 2. Maybe you've already given up on some of these things. Whereas if you flip that and you go, I'm going to only do things that I want to do, that yes are pushing me towards my goal, but things that I do not hate. It's not grinding my teeth. It's not dragging through the mud to get there. I'm enjoying doing these things, at least to some extent, right? Like a workout isn't always fun, but I can
Right.
choose the
But it feels
lesser of
good
evils.
later.
Right, exactly. But I can choose the thing that like I hate the least, right? So it's like there
Yeah.
has to be some discomfort, but I can find the thing that I like that I enjoy at least a little bit. And then I'm also breaking it down to smaller parts. So I'm not overwhelming myself with so many changes right out of the gate, and I'm giving myself a fighting chance because the thing is going to be hard inherently. And again, I agree with you. I don't really enjoy goals. Like I don't set goals for myself, but I know that it's a helpful tool for most people. But you have to understand inherently in setting a goal, you are shining light on a lap.
Stretching.
You
Yeah.
only set goals for things you don't have and things that are hard to do. No one sets goals to tie their shoes or watch more Netflix or eat more fast food because you do those things automatically. They don't
Yeah.
take any extra effort. So if you're setting a goal, you're saying, I want to eat healthier, what you're saying is, eating healthy is hard. I'm not doing it given my current capacities. So I have to change something about me to reach that goal. So inherently, that's a big thing to do. And now you're throwing 6 other goals on top of that. You're not giving yourself even a chance to succeed.
Yeah, exactly right. I want to share another thought on how we can make this a little easier on ourselves, something really practical that everyone can take and hopefully run with. And this is just the idea of habit stacking. Okay. Or you can swap habits, you can stack habits, you can combine things that you're already doing. I just want to give you some really easy ways to make these big, difficult changes just this little bit easier so that you might have more chance of sticking with it. And so some of the ideas that I have come up with for past clients have been things like holding a squat while your coffee brews. Okay. Seems like nothing, but what it is it means you're going to be holding a squat probably every day. And if you drink a lot of coffee, that might add up really quickly. It could be, you know, pairing some affirmations with brushing your teeth to encourage yourself, to cheer yourself up, to remember to stand in your power and your intention. It could be having your alarm set as your morning meditation so it plays automatically, right? It could be just the smallest things. And sometimes it's, like you say, swapping out that piece of candy for a piece of fruit. Get something really delicious and fresh so that it tricks your brain into thinking like this is actually, it is better than the crappy candy, right? That sugar thing is really tricky. So I get it. So if you're there, I totally understand. But small little swaps are going to be much easier to maintain, or pairing up those things, planning a bit ahead, right? It's harder to stick with your guns in the moment, but if you've already laid out your gym clothes or your yoga mat is conveniently there for you, your dumbbells are where you're going to trip over them, you're more likely to pick them up and do the thing. And the last little thing that I wanted to just throw in here is to not like go in and say, like, if you're going to do workouts, don't make it I'm going to work out for an hour 6 times a week. Like, don't be that kind of ridiculous right off the hop. If that's not what you're used to, yeah, that's going to flop real fast. So starting to incorporate little movements in your day throughout the day will actually then give you the motivation, maybe then to go walk around the block. Maybe next time it's a 10-minute walk. Maybe you do work your way up to doing a little bit of a strength training workout and a yoga session. Who knows? But the problem is if you go all the way in, like you mentioned before, it gets overwhelming and then we're more likely to quit, going back to zero. Instead of building these little habits in, just where they fit in your routine so that it doesn't feel like in your brain alarm bells going off and being like, oh my God, who is this and what's happening? I don't know how I can keep up with this, right? It just makes it a little bit more palpable for your nervous system to stay on board and not have a freak out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, we use even I love talking to you because
Yeah.
we use the same verbiage, like even the
Yeah.
same words. Like we've never before meeting the a couple weeks ago, we never even met. And I'm like, you're talking, I'm like, it's like I'm listening to myself.
Yeah.
Small incremental change layered over time is exactly how I phrase it to every new client. I'm like, you think it's going to be this one big change you're just going to do and everything's going to be different. That never ever works out because even when it does work out, it doesn't. Everyone has had the experience of losing a bunch of weight in an extreme way through restrictive diets, through tons of cardio or something like that, and then they go back and usually gain the weight back, if not more.
Yep.
And if you haven't done that yourself, you have a friend or a family member who has, because it's so pervasive, because it's just not manageable. So why even start yourself on that path? So it's the small things that almost seem, to your point, imperceptible. It's like this doesn't even do it. What's one glass of water going to do? What's sitting in a squat going to do? What's taking 1,000 extra steps going to do? But all of a sudden, over 365 days, you get 10,000 squats and you get 100,000 steps and you get 300 glasses of water, and that makes a difference. So I think that that's like the biggest place that I want to start people. But I want to flip it and go, like you said, all right, assuming we've talked about the things that hold people up, the things that the kind of the mistakes, the missteps that people make. It's like, what happens if you already fell off, right? It's
Yeah.
January, what, 11th right here. You're 2 weeks into the new year. What happens if I already messed up? And there's two perspectives that I want to offer on this. The first perspective is, of course you did, right? It's like,
You're
this is the
human.
Right. This is the thing. It's like someone asked me this the other day of like, I was on a podcast and they're like, well, how do you help people who struggle with setbacks? They, people who fall off and they get in their head about it and they beat themselves up about it. And I'm like, how just how dare you? Who do you think you are to believe that you don't get to struggle? Like every person in the world struggles, and you think that you're going to start this journey, this path towards health, towards happiness, towards wealth, towards what, towards anything, and it's just going to come easy. Like every story that you've ever been told has a hero's journey. Every person that you've ever met has told you about their struggles. Every person you look up to has struggled. Your family has struggled. Your grandparents struggled. Your parents struggled. Your sister, your cousin, but you think that you're somehow going to get to just do it and everything's going to work out. Like it's mind-boggling to think that we even think that way. Because when you
Yeah.
hear it like that, you're like, it's so obvious. It's like, of course you couldn't. So this is not a flaw. It is a
Yeah.
part of the process. You are supposed to struggle. Inherent in the struggle is the thing that makes you better. If you just started and it went well right away and you just was gangbusters from there, it's like you don't even get anything from that. It is the literal struggle that is what creates the growth. If you went to the gym right now and you lift a 5 pound weight and you go, well, that's too easy. I probably should lift 15. And then you just keep lifting the 5 pound weight and you don't lift the 15s, you're not going to get any stronger. You're not giving your body a reason to adapt. And
Yeah.
so again, this doesn't have to just be about fitness. This is health, this is wealth, this is relationships, this is anything. If
Yeah.
it doesn't, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. So, just start to look at these things as like it's not a mistake, it is a part of it. And then you can also start to see that even if you mess up, quote unquote, air quotes there for people listening and not watching, if you mess up, if you fall off, it's like that's not real either. I had a client just the other day who started this year. His goal was to cut out all sugar for the month of January, which I'm not very big on hyper restrictive things like that, but just as a challenge, like I support people. I'm
Sure.
like, okay, I get it. That's a hard thing to do. And like I like doing hard things. And it's not forever, it's just for 1 month. We can do anything for 1 month. And he's also had the problem of like binging with tons of like snacks and candies and stuff like that. Like I'm talking 5,000 calories of gummy bears and like crazy stuff. So it's like, all right, probably would do you some service to not have sugar for a while. And he did great the first week. And then this week he had a day where he was like, he fell off, but still was less than he normally would have. And then he was like, all right, I'm ready to get right back on it. And it's like, we talked about it. And I'm like, okay, now even if you quote unquote fall off 3 more times, you still had in the 30 days when normally you would have probably eaten 2,000 calories of candy every single day, at least, if not more. Now you had 4 days of having sugar and the rest of the month not. So if you're looking at it like, well, I set this goal of having 30 perfect days and I fell off and that now I didn't hit my goal. It's like that can seem defeating. But if you realize that in the grand scheme of things, you're still doing better than you would have in the past. And that's always the goal. It's not comparing yourself to this future perfect idealized version of you. It's, am I doing better this January than I would have done last January? And if you can say that, that's forward progress. That's all you can ever really look for.
Absolutely. And I think crucial in that is some self-compassion, because we are, after all, humans. We are, after all, going to make mistakes. And the real problem lies not within the initial falling off. No, no, that's human. That's normal. That's expected. And if you can actually go in knowing and expecting that, you will be prepared with that self-compassion, so that instead of going, fuck it, I ruined it, it's all over, I'm going to have 3 times as many gummy bears today to make myself feel better. No, no, that's going to take you way back to the beginning, or even maybe further back than the beginning. If you can say, well, I'm human, I made a mistake, I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to keep on going. And it's part of the process. And having that self-compassion to say, like, it's okay. It is a challenge. And to further add to your point there, people say it gets to be easy. That's not right off the hop. That means after you've been through some of the challenges, in retrospect, it looks really freaking easy when you do something, right? Now you've pushed and challenged yourself, you've grown, you've expanded. Your experience is this much bigger. It's like I think about when I go hiking. When I go up a slightly scarier kind of situation with more scree, and I might be shitting my pants a little bit and having some anxiety, but it sure makes the last mountain that wasn't so bad look like a cakewalk. It didn't feel easy when I was doing that one either. But now that I've expanded my own experience, my own perspective on it, it feels easier. So I think when people say, like, oh, it gets to be easy, like, just bear in mind that they're further on the journey than you are. And now in looking back, that's where the perspective of it gets to be easy comes from, because they have expanded, they have pushed, they have grown. And it requires self-compassion to do this. Otherwise, you're going to end up shaming yourself. And I don't know about you, but I've had a number of clients tell me that they think that they can shame themselves into motivation.
Mm.
And the truth is actually when they actually verbalize and say that out loud, they're like, well, hold up a minute. Actually, that now that I'm saying it out loud, but our mind has this way of convincing us that it's actually just better to just stay safe in what's comfortable. And that maybe, if we just trash talk ourselves enough, we'll feel motivated to go and do the thing. And there's two problems with this. Number one, shame actually makes you feel like shit and not really motivating. So there is that. But also motivation doesn't come from thinking and hoping and wishing. It actually comes from doing the thing, and doing the thing consistently. Fall offs aside, because that doesn't affect your consistency unless you let it. Consistently showing up and doing the thing, flowing with that intention that you set to continue moving forward, that's how you're going to get the results.
Yeah. I'll take it one step further, right? It's like you just said falling off doesn't affect your consistency, because it's true. To me, your consistency comes from the fall off.
Yeah.
I would say, like, if you do it, like to use my client for that client I was just talking about, for example, those first 7 days where he's like running on a high, it's new year, he's blah blah blah, he's hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it. It's like those are easy. I call those layups. Those are gimmies.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the day after you fall off where now you have to actually try. Like that is when the difference is made. It's the same thing as people who go like, well, yeah, I went to the gym because like I had nothing to do today and like my schedule was clear, so I went to the gym. It's like, all right, cool. Like, I mean, I'll take those. Like, yeah, sure. But it's the day when you go and you're like, oh, I was so tired and I went anyway. Or the day where you're like, everything was going crazy at work, but I had an hour workout on my schedule, and normally I would have canceled it because I had to put out work fires, but I told them no, I'm keeping a boundary and I'm going to do the workout. Like those are the only ones that even count. The rest of them are freebies. It's like, and you mentioned like, okay, people will say it gets easier. It's like, I don't even think so. I personally like it gets easier. It never
Yeah.
gets easy,
Yeah.
right?
Well, what you used to do that was hard gets easier, right? So
Right,
it
but
can
then
feel like it's easier.
right. But like people will say a lot of this, especially with exercise or eating healthy, they'll go, oh, like, I wish it was easy for me like it is for you, right? Like some people just love working out. Some people love running, right? I wish I got that runner's high. It's like, I don't think so. Again, like I'm sure some people are masochists, right? Some people like pain. Some people have like having hot wax dripped on their nipples, So some people like weird things. That's a subsection of people. Most people just learn that the pain or the discomfort in the immediate is worth the result, because the feeling they get afterwards, the feeling of, yes, the runner's high, but also the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of being a person who kept their word to themselves, the feeling of you get to tell your partner, your spouse, your kids that you went and did a workout, right? If you have kids and you're like, oh, just came home from a 10-mile run, they're going to be like, oh my God, dad, mom, you're so cool. And like that feels good. So there's a lot of positive benefits you get from the workout, but they don't come in that moment. In that moment, all you're feeling is, God damn, this sucks. Fuck this. I hate this. My legs hurt. My back hurts. All of this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is once you've done it enough times, you've gotten that end result, right? You've gone home after the workout and felt that rush of endorphins. You've seen the scale go down. You've seen the muscle on your body. So you're like, okay, I can remember there's a reason to this. But when you're first starting, you don't have that. You only have the negative. You have theoretical positives that people have told you about. It gets better. It gets easier. You'll love it. But when you're a week, a month into just working out for the first time and you've never done it, your brain is just like, no, all of these people are lying. All of these people are crazy. You're different. You're broken. You're wrong, because all you're feeling is the negative side of things. So it's just to understand that, like, it's not, again, a flaw in the system, to use your analogy of the climbing a mountain thing. It's like you're climbing a different mountain. And
Yeah.
every time you do that, that is the positive, that you're like, okay, like it's the challenge is in the fact that I'm trying something that is making me uncomfortable. And you can remind yourself of that. And that's what keeps you going long enough to actually get the result.
Yeah, that's what's necessary. It's like just slowly expanding. Imagine like a rubber band wrapped around your comfort zone. We're not trying to snap that thing. We're trying to slowly expand it so that our comfort zone can grow with us, so that we can bring more of the, exciting, possible, but yet uncertain outcomes into our experience, into our reality, make our life more interesting, more exciting, more fulfilling. And who doesn't want that? We want to, is our intended state to feel good, to feel happiness, to feel joy, to feel peace. Those are our intended natural state experiences. A lot of the rest of it, we have to just sort of weed through and remember who we are at the root of it all. Any last thoughts that you would like to share before we wrap up this conversation? I think we've given lots of people, or lots of things for people to work with, lots of ideas, hopefully an encouragement that if you're struggling and you've fallen off, today is a fresh start. You know, any moment is a fresh start. You fell off 5 minutes ago, you can still start fresh right here, right now. And remember that you're human. You're not actually broken. You don't need fixing. You're actually whole just as you are. And in recognizing your wholeness, your miraculous existence, you know, that alone makes you worthy of love and joy and peace and all of the experiences that you want to have. Any last thoughts, Paul, to send out there into the world?
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I think that if you're listening to this far, go back and just start from the beginning because I speak very fast and you do too. There's a lot we shoved into this, but the main point that I can't hammer enough is again going back to the very first thing I said, enthusiasm. Are you doing what you want to do because you want to do it? And if you have a goal, can you find a way to work towards that goal that feels good to you? Physically and mentally. It feels like a body yes, as opposed to something that you have to do that you're just going to grind through. And whatever your goal is, reverse engineer that. Instead of thinking like, I'm just going to force myself to do this thing to get to this place, think, all right, this is where I want to get. What are some things that I enjoy doing that even if they won't take me all the way there, will move me closer? And then you continually run that through your head and you get to a place where you enjoy forward progress, you enjoy working on yourself, and you enjoy doing the hard things that we need to do.
Absolutely. And, you know, people say fake it till you make it, but I want to, no, that's not what we're doing. How about let's be it till we see it? Because that is really setting and holding that intention and living in that experience all along the journey as well. Thank you so much for joining me today for this incredible conversation. I appreciate you. And to all of those watching or listening, I hope you go out there and crush those intentions, reach for the stars, go after those BHAGs all day long, and have an amazing, amazing 2024. I love you all. Now let's go do some epic shit, shall we?